The disastrous life of Saiki Kusuo begins by showing a young man named Saiki Kusuo who has the special ability to become a psychic. He can read other people's minds and control objects around him using only the power of his mind. Since Saiki was a toddler, he has shown abilities and developments that are far above average compared to children his age, where he has been able to walk in the air since the age of 1 month and move things since 6 months. With such great abilities, we might expect that Saiki's life will be easier than the lives of other children. However, his life is much more complicated because his parents have recently been fighting and making a fuss at home. While at school, Saiki decides to hide his power and chooses to be an ordinary student who stands out too much in his school. This is because he once traumatized a female teacher in kindergarten after he used the power of reading other people's minds in a Jonkin game or rock, paper, scissors. Since then, he chooses not to get too close to other people, so they don't know his power. At his school, Saiki has a friend named Riki Nendo, whose mind can't be read by him because Nendo has an empty mind or never thinks at all. Nendo is the dumbest student in a school where he always does stupid things, and his academic scores are often below average. In Saiki's class, a boy named Shun Kaido often acts strangely and fantasizes about the superpower in his right hand and a secret criminal organization after him. Due to Kaido's strange behavior, his classmates often talk behind his back and make fun of him. However, he still often acts silly and pretends to be a hero to get the attention of his classmates. Besides Nendo and Kaido, in Saiki's class, some female students like to seek attention, especially his attention, because the student really likes Saiki. The female student named Kakomi Terahashi often teases and seduces him so that he falls in love with her. Besides Kakomi, another female student who likes him is named Chiyo Yumehara, but he always tries to ignore or thwart her seduction with his power. After that, in Saiki's class, there is a boy named Kine Shihiro who is always passionate about taking sports lessons and has ambitions to become a winner. On the other hand, in every sports lesson, Saiki tries to control his power so he doesn't hurt other students because his power is too big and can cause much damage. In addition, he tries to hide the appearance of his pink hair and antenna by controlling the minds of people around him so that they think his hair is normal black and don't realize the antenna in his head. The antenna on his head controls his power so that Saiki does not easily run out of energy or lose control. One day, Saiki saw a male magician performing a magic show in a park, and he decided to watch the show. But after finding out that the magic show was fake, all the audience immediately left the magician except for him, who asked the magician to immediately take off his hat so the dove inside could breathe. After that, Saiki showed his magic ability to realize the magician that he had to learn more. The magician was amazed by his ability and asked him to teach better magic skills. A few weeks later, while Saiki was watching a drama on television, he saw the magician he had met the other day and saw that the magician's abilities had grown tremendously. That day, Saiki was asked by his parents to look after the house alone because they were both going to a wedding. He decided not to come to the event because there would be a lot of negative people at the event. Seeing the messy condition of the house, he took care of all the household chores, from washing clothes to taking out the trash. When Saiki accidentally sees a cockroach, he immediately teleports abroad to avoid the cockroach because he is very disturbed by insects whose minds he can't read. After Nendo helped him deal with the cockroach problem, he immediately ordered Nendo to go home with a cold stare. The next day, Nendo revisits Saiki's house to invite him to go to the beach, and it makes his mother feel touched because he finally has a friend. At first, Saiki wanted to refuse Nendo's invitation, but after his mother insisted, he had no choice but to follow the invitation. It turned out that Nendo purposely went to the beach to approach the girls wearing bikinis and impress them with him. The plan inadvertently succeeds as Saiki helps him to save 3 of their schoolmates from drowning. The next day, Hiro goes to Saiki to tell him about the sports festival that the school will be holding in the coming weeks. He said he had built the wooden gate himself, but it turned out the gate had been damaged after he checked it. Hiro asked Saiki to help him repair the gate while he searched for additional wood. Saiki finished part of the gate using his strength and waited for Hiro to return while reading a book. Unfortunately, until late afternoon, Hiro still hasn't returned, and Saiki finds out that he is picking logs straight from the forest because all the store building have closed. Hiro's action was greatly appreciated by his classmates because he was very excited to prepare for the new event, which would be held in 1 month. The next day, Saiki saw Nendo acting strange and different from usual, so he and Kaido followed Nendo. It turned out that Nendo was missing his father, who had died before he was born due to a car accident, and he had deliberately bought flowers to visit his father's funeral. At night when Saiki comes home from school, he sees a mysterious letter that says someone knows his psychic abilities. He took off his fake gloves that he had been using to prevent him from reading the memories of an object he touched. But before Saiki could read the memory of the letter, the author of the letter had already appeared in his room. The person who sent the letter was a young man named Reita Toritsuka, who had the special ability to see ghosts or supernatural beings. Reita has had this ability since childhood, and he often has difficulty distinguishing humans from ghosts, so he has a habit of touching other people to check if they are human. The next day, Saiki looks shocked after discovering that Reita is a new student at his school and decides to force him to hide the secret about his powers. Meanwhile, Reita chose to reveal his power to other students so that he became popular at his school. The following day, Saiki receives a prophecy about a huge explosion in his town. He decided to prevent the disaster by removing a small stone to avoid the original cause of all these incidents. The small stone will later cause a girl to slip and cause a truck driver to have an accident until he crashes into a gas tank. After that, a motorcyclist will lose focus when he sees the panties of that girl, so the motorbike slips and hits the gasoline, causing a big explosion. After getting rid of the small stone, Saiki again gets a warning about a big fire at his school caused by Nendo bringing a small stone to school. The stone will later be thrown by Kato into the school corridor and cause a child to slip until the stone is thrown against the lamp, and the stone hit the kerosene carried by Hahiro, then make the spark fall into the kerosene and cause a fire. Fortunately, Saiki became a hero again by preventing the spark from falling into the kerosene and preventing a fire from starting. The next day, Reita seems frustrated because the girls at his school are no longer interested in his power, so he asks Saiki to help him hypnotize them. However, because Saiki refuses, he is forced to use his other power to insert another spirit into his body. Reita enters the spirit of a playboy man and the spirit of a charismatic man to seduce the girl he likes. After school, Saiki went to a mini market to buy his favorite coffee pudding by considering the composition and quality of each pudding. He is obsessed with coffee pudding and is willing to pay a lot of money to buy premium coffee pudding, so he takes care of the pudding very carefully so that it doesn't spoil. In Saiki's class, a female student named Chisato Mera always refuses to hang out together because she has to work part-time to help her family's finances. When Saiki accidentally meets Mera at the cafe where she works, she immediately asks him to keep the fact that she is working part-time from school a secret. This is because their school has strict regulations prohibiting their students from working. Saiki is willing to help Mera by keeping the secret that she works part-time in several places. He even uses his power to control the minds of the teachers and students so that they don't realize that there is such a rule in their school. Recently, Saiki's mother is often deceived by fraudulent salesmen who sell fake products to her. Seeing his mother's condition, which continues to be tricked into spending a lot of money, Saiki decides to help his mother by making her able to hear the voice of the salesman's thoughts, so that she can realize that he only wants to deceive her. When the salesman runs away from Saiki's mother, Saiki finds a strange ring left by the salesman. It turns out that the ring is a ring that can block his telepathic power, so he immediately uses the ring to go to the place that he has wanted to visit, namely the cinema. Since childhood, Saiki has wanted to go to the cinema, but he often loses interest because cinema officials often leak spoilers in their heads. Even people often made so many noises in their heads that he couldn't focus on watching the movie. Now that he has a ring to block telepathy, Saiki can watch movies in theaters without worrying if people will leak spoilers or get noisy. While at the cinema, Saiki accidentally meets Kaokomi in the audience seat, who coincidentally gets a seat number near him. Shortly after, her older brother, a famous actor, suddenly appears and causes chaos in the cinema studio. It turns out that Kaokomi's older brother appears because he is jealous of the closeness between Kaokomi and Saiki. That's why her older brother visits Saiki's house and asks him to stay away from her and let her be his. At Saiki's school, many students are discussing divination services that can help them read the future or the past in their lives. Still, Kaido admits that he is not interested in such things while saying that the divination service is an evil plan of a secret organization. But apparently, Saiki caught Kaido waiting in line in front of the popular divination service, and he decided to follow him into the divination service. After observing for a while, Saiki concluded that the divination service was simply a scam to sell counterfeit goods with the lure that they could bring good luck. And in Kaido's case, the fortune teller said that the magic necklace in front of Kaido could make him have new friends, and the problem of not having friends could be solved. After getting the necklace, Kaido coincidentally meets Nendo and Saiki, which makes him think that the necklace really works. Shortly after, Kaokomi appears and offers to come with Saiki and the others, planning to eat ramen together. Unfortunately, the ramen restaurant that will be their place to eat this time is very full, and the ramen served has a very bland taste. This then made Kaokomi feel tired, and she decided to go straight home after finishing eating together. When Saiki, Kaido, and Nendo were about to return to their homes, they accidentally passed Kaido's mother, who invited them to stop by and eat coffee pudding together. While in Kaido's room, Nendo finds a notebook that turns out to be Kaido's imaginary notebook about a secret organization. Kaido's mother is a very strict person, so she always demands her son study hard. Even Saiki and Nendo are asked to solve the study problems in Kaido's room. Fortunately, Saiki was able to solve all the problems quickly with his genius in solving problems. Since Kaido's mother thought he was a genius, she encouraged Kaido to hang out with them more often. One day while strolling on the sidewalk, Saiki heard the sound of thoughts from someone who seemed to be in a lot of pain. It turned out that the voice came from a magician that he had met in the park near the school. The magician looked confused because his assistant could not participate in the show tonight due to a motorcycle accident that required his assistant to be rushed to the hospital. When showing a magic box that will be shown tonight, the magician looks confused because he still doesn't know the trick of the box. Saiki was finally forced to help the magician so that no other victims were injured in the show so that the show could run smoothly. Unfortunately, Nendo volunteered to be an assistant in the magic show, so the magician decided to give up and cancel his trick. As a result, the audience immediately left the show, and some in the audience beat the magician until the show failed. Fortunately, Nendo's mother, the magician's ex-wife, is willing to help him by giving him a credit card that the magician once gave to her. On Christmas Eve, Nendo visited Saiki's house to spend Christmas Eve together. After hearing that Nendo's father died when he was a baby, Saiki's father decided to comfort Nendo by disguising as Santa Claus and giving him gifts. Saiki helps his father convince Nendo by coming to a deer in front of the house so that Nendo is increasingly convinced that Saiki's father is Santa Claus. The next day, Saiki and his family went to the temple to pray together to welcome the New Year celebrations. His father prays that he can win gambling, and his mother prays that he will make many friends, while Saiki, who doesn't really believe in religion, only hopes he will have one day of peace. At the shrine, Saiki meets his other friends, Nendo, Kakomi, Kaido, and Hiro. Saiki's mother was happy that he had many friends and invited them to eat together at her house. In the middle of their conversation, Saiki's overexcited mother accidentally said that Saiki was a shaman, and the atmosphere immediately turned silent. Seeing the increasingly awkward situation, he used his telekinetic power to move the glass and spill water to distract everyone's attention. In the evening, when Saiki's friends return home, Saiki decides to erase their memories of the fact that he is a psychic using a memory eraser magic wand. Unfortunately, the wand doesn't work to erase memories but replaces old memories with other memories, making his friends want to be closer to him. Shortly after that, Valentine's Day arrived, and every friend of Saiki's was excited to receive a chocolate gift from someone else. Reita thought he would get a lot of chocolate from the girls at his school, but it turned out that he didn't get any chocolate because they felt bad for him, who liked to spread charm. On the other hand, Hiro got a lot of chocolates because he is a student who likes to help others and helps his friend at school. At the same time, Kakomi is followed by many boys at school who hope she will give them chocolate. Unfortunately, she only prepares chocolate for the person she likes, Saiki. But after considering that other students might beat him, she decides to throw the chocolate away. During summer vacation, Saiki wants to enjoy a quiet day without being disturbed by anyone. However, the ghost spirit of Nendo's father suddenly appears and disturbs him continuously, so he must do many ways to get rid of the spirit. A few weeks after the holidays are over, the school holds a final semester exam where in each exam, Saiki always tries to cheat other students to find the wrong answers so that he doesn't become a student who stands out too much in his school. Even in the physical exam, Saiki tries to control his strength so that other students don't realize his strength. After the physical exam, his school holds a sports festival, forcing Saiki to participate in the match because his parents come to watch the game. In the middle of the match, Nendo accidentally pulled out Saiki's antenna, and it instantly knocked him unconscious. As a result, satellites from various countries worldwide have almost experienced errors and damage. Luckily, they immediately put the antenna back on Saiki's head, and things could return to normal because his antenna was a tool that he used to withstand his force, which was too great to control. A few days later, Saiki's father asked Saiki to help him teleport to his office because he was very late. Saiki was forced to help his father after he promised to buy coffee pudding for him. When he arrived at the office, Saiki saw his father's workplace conditions were very chaotic. His father and the other editors were nagging manga writers to finish their respective projects immediately. When Saiki was about to return home, his father accidentally spilled coffee in a pile of the revised manga, so he again called Saiki to help him. This is why Saiki's life is not always easy. Even though he has psychic powers, people around him often create problems, and he is forced to help them solve them. The next day, while Saiki is enjoying a moment alone at his house, his new neighbor suddenly entrusts her son to him so that he fails to enjoy some quiet time. The boy is very obsessed with the hero named Soda Man and thinks that Saiki is Soda Man in the real world because the boy has seen him use his power. Fortunately, The boy didn't stay too long at Saiki's house because Nendo suddenly came with a face similar to the villain in the Soda Man series, so the boy immediately burst into tears and left. That night, when Saiki came to the festival to buy his favorite snacks, he realized that a pickpocket had stolen his wallet, which made him feel very humiliated. He immediately used his strength to change his wallet into a junk motorcycle so he could find out who the person who had stolen his wallet was. After finding the pickpocket, Saiki immediately reported him to the police and returned another wallet to its owners, which was stolen. And it turned out that the wallets belonged to his classmates, namely Kaido, Hiro, and Nendo. The next day, the students in Saiki's class were busy discussing the field trip the school would be held in the next few weeks. During the group division, Saiki was in the same group with Nendo and Kaido because no other male students wanted to be in the same group with them. Meanwhile, Kakomi and Chio are trying to think of a way for their group to join Saiki's. Coincidentally, after the lottery draw was over, a group of female students wanted to swap because they didn't want to be in the same group as Nendo. Kakomi quickly volunteered to replace the group, hoping she would have more opportunities to approach Saiki. In the evening, when Saiki and his parents are having dinner together, Kakomi's older brother goes to him to complain because she is going on a trip with him. Seeing the older brother being ridiculous, Saiki decides to take Kakomi's older brother's plane ticket to give to Mera, who looks sad because she doesn't have enough money to buy a plane ticket. On the day of departure for the tourist spot, the plane that Saiki and his classmate were about to board was delayed due to a typhoon incident. Therefore, Saiki decided to fight the hurricane phenomenon with his power to get rid of the mood of the gloomy students. While on the plane, Kaido looked weak and nauseous because his medicine was left in his room. Seeing this, Saiki teleported to take medicine in Kaido's room and gave the medicine to him so that his condition quickly improved. After spending a lot of energy using his power, Saiki intended to rest for a while before they arrived at their destination. Unfortunately, after he received a prediction that the plane they were traveling in would crash, Saiki was forced to cancel his intention to rest and decided to pick up the plane that almost crashed and bring the plane to the airport safely. After arriving at the destination city, all students continued their journey by bus to the hotel where they were staying. After arriving at the hotel, Saiki's group is in the same room with another group of students who seem to be planning evil things on this trip. It turned out that they intended to peek at the female students who were bathing and had prepared a periscope for peeking. Luckily, Saiki used his power to control their minds, so they looked at the boys' bath instead. As a result, they experienced a mental breakdown after seeing Nendo's personal area, which was very surprising. That night, Saiki decided to be alone on the beach and rest in a calm atmosphere because he had used a lot of his power all day. Unfortunately, when he was asleep, Kakomi suddenly appeared and pulled out his antenna, making him lose consciousness. As a result, he accidentally moves the hotel to the middle of the island by replacing the hotel with a skull and a Titanic ship while he is asleep. Fortunately, Saiki could control his power and return the hotel to its original place before the students realized it. He knows that Kakomi has taken his antenna and immediately looks for her. She accidentally moved into the forest and was almost attacked by a bear. He immediately saves her and makes her fall unconscious so that she will think that all previous events were just a dream. The next day, Saiki and the other students continued their journey to the next location, which was the beach. The male students were excited to see Kakomi's appearance wearing a very sexy bikini, which fascinated them. Shortly after, several men were bothering Kakomi and Chio, so Saiki immediately helped them by controlling their mind, and Kaido suddenly came to beat them. As a result, Kaido got the praise, while Saiki could only give him a thumbs up as a sign of salute. Before the tour ends, Saiki intends to buy ice cream topped with coffee, which only sells 5 servings daily. Unfortunately, when he arrived at the ice cream shop, Nendo, Kaido, Mera, Kakomi, and Chio had already arrived and ordered his coveted ice cream. Fortunately, Saiki's friends were kind enough to share their ice cream with Saiki so that he got more portion and seemed happy to enjoy it. A few days later, the Saiki class accepted a new student named Arain Kuboyasu. Arain is a male student who used to like fighting and joins a group of thugs who often fight with groups of thugs from other schools. Now he decides to repent and live a better life at his new school. He is still learning to control his emotions so that he is not easily provoked to hit or beat other people, especially his new school students. In his class, Arain still hasn't got a friend, and when he tries to approach Saiki, he looks at Arain with an annoying look, making him ill. Fortunately, Hiro, a good boy liked by everyone, immediately greets Arain and invites him to be friends. After that, Hiro made an announcement in front of the class about the art festival activities the school would hold in a few days and asked his classmates to suggest ideas about what kind of performance they would put on. After discussing and accommodating many ideas, they finally decided to hold an exhibition of stones with unique shapes. On the day of the exhibition, The students seemed enthusiastic about bringing their own stones of various shapes ranging from hearts, roses, and crystals to stones with blood stains brought by Arain. When Nendo and Saiki were in the bathroom, he accidentally took off his glasses and looked at Nendo. As a result, Nendo turns to stone and can only turn into a human like before after waiting for 24 hours. It turns out that Saiki's eyes can turn objects he sees into stone, so he chooses to always wear glasses. Luckily, his father came to the school fair so he could borrow his father's glasses so that he wouldn't turn more people to stone. A few days later, Kaido saw Arain being threatened by students from other schools, so he became confused and panicked. Fortunately, Arain, a former thug, can easily beat them. Since then, Kaido's view of Arain began to change, and he began to suspect Arain as a lawbreaker because he was often covered in blood. In the afternoon, when Kaido and Saiki came home from school, they were harassed by students from other schools, so they tried to escape from the pursuit of these delinquent students. Fortunately, they met Arain, who happened to be passing by in the area, so he immediately beat up the delinquent students and saved them. Kaido's misunderstanding with him was finally resolved, and he is now starting to be friends with him. One day, his school held a 6 miles marathon with a checkpoint every 1 mile. As usual, Saiki tried to control his power so as not to stand out too much and preferred to aim for the middle ranks. While Nendo and Hiro still compete for first place, Kaido struggles to finish the race without falling unconscious. After a long competition, Hiro finally won first place, and Saiki won as the 44th winner. The next day, Saiki is forced to go to a karaoke place with his friends because he intends to buy coffee ice cream sold at the karaoke restaurant. When it was his turn to sing, Saiki purposely turned the lights off so he could escape to the toilet. However, when he returned to the karaoke room, Saiki found his friends fallen unconscious because they heard Nendo's very destructive voice. After seeing that his ice cream order had arrived, Saiki intended to enjoy the ice cream, but Hiro instead forced him to sing again. To escape from that situation, he asked Nendo to sing along so that all the students immediately ran away. The next day, Kaokomi's older brother comes to Saiki and asks him to talk to her. He tells Saiki not to go downtown because he will be filming there. Apparently, Kaokomi and her older brother are still fighting, and they haven't been able to talk to each other. The next day when Saiki said that, Kaokomi took the opportunity to ask him out on a date to apologize because her older brother had troubled him. Saiki was forced to accept the invitation because if he refused Kaokomi's invitation, then she would go crazy. The next day, Saiki and Kaokomi went to a cake restaurant and ate together in a quite crowded condition because her fans entered the restaurant. Due to Kaokomi's charm, they can eat for free at the restaurant, and she even gets a gift cake from the shop. After leaving the restaurant, they go to the bowling alley to play bowling together until they almost run into Kaokomi's older brother, who coincidentally comes to the place. Luckily, Saiki was able to save them with a transparent power that made Kaokomi's older brother unable to see them. The next day, Kaokomi returns to meet Saiki to invite him to eat cake together. However, because he is taking care of a little boy left by a neighbor, she is forced to give the cake to the little boy. At first, Kaokomi could still tolerate a little boy who accidentally called her auntie. Still, after the little boy forced her to be quiet, she experienced a mental breakdown and decided to go home. Fortunately, before Kaokomi went too far, the little boy apologized for mistaking her as a female character from the cartoon Soda Man. One day Saiki's father finds his cat passed out from choking on something. Saiki immediately helped the cat by turning into a mini-human and entering the cat's throat to remove the object stuck in the cat's throat. And after the cat survived, he was forced to wait for an hour until his body could return to normal. Unfortunately, while under the chair, Saiki accidentally met a cockroach, so he immediately ran from the cockroach and hid in his father's robot toy. Fortunately, his cat caught the cockroach and killed it calmly. Thanks to that, he became grateful for the cat and started getting to know the cat. On Christmas Eve, Saiki goes to the place of his father's job to send gifts to every little child around their house. He sends gifts that vary depending on the requests of each child he visits, including the request of a boy who wishes his parents could make time for his son. After completing all the gift delivery tasks, Saiki charges his father a fairly large amount because he can complete many gift deliveries very well. Saiki then used the money to buy a television at an electronics store because his television was broken. Even though he can repair the television with his power to reverse time, he must continue to use that power every day, which will drain a lot of energy. When he arrived at the electronics store, Saiki bought a coffee pudding maker instead of buying a television because he couldn't resist the temptation when it came to coffee pudding. Later at school, Reita tells Saiki that his power to enter other people's spirits has now increased because he can summon the spirits of famous spirits such as John Lennon, Bruce Lee to Steve Jobs. However, Reita easily loses control of his body, and other spirits can easily enter his body. Fortunately, Saiki, who realized that Reita's body was being possessed by someone else's spirit, immediately helped him by kicking his body. After that, Reita tries to find another way to become popular at school by enrolling in a community club. However, because other clubs constantly rejected him, he created his own club called the Paranormal Club. The only members of the club are himself, Saiki, who is forced to join, Kaido, Chio, who joins to be with Kaido, and a strange girl who likes to cast spells. That day, Saki and his classmates received a lesson to practice cooking in a group. He really likes cooking lessons because he can make a lot of delicious crepes, but it turns out that he has absolutely no cooking talent and instead burns every piece of his food. In the afternoon, when Saiki comes home from school, he is spied on by a group of young men who really hate him after discovering that he once dated Kakomi, their idol. They decide to kidnap Saiki and force him to stop approaching Kakomi. Fortunately, he can use his power to show a photo that shows him, Kakomi, and a little boy together. This made the Kakomi worship group change their minds and support their relationship to see Kakomi happy. A few days later, Saiki and his parents visited the grandparents' hospital, which lives in a rural area. After they arrived, Saiki's grandfather suddenly acted indifferently and immediately moved to another room. It turns out that Saiki's grandfather is the type of tsundere person who is always cold to the person they like but keeps warm and loving feelings for that person. His grandfather was so happy with Saiki's presence, and he continued to act strange and awkward in front of Saiki. Knowing that his grandfather loved him very much, Saiki tried to approach and accompany his grandfather hiding in another room. After that, his grandfather bought a ticket to the amusement park to make Saiki feel happy and excited. But the amusement park has many almost damaged and dangerous rides, so every visitor must sign a consent letter. After riding a roller coaster at a very high speed, his father looks tired and weak. His grandfather experienced the same thing when riding the rotary propeller ride with Saiki, but he still tried to protect Saiki when the propeller swayed irregularly. It made Saiki feel happy knowing that his grandfather loved him with all his heart. The next day, when Saiki's grandparents drove Saiki and his parents back to town, their car suddenly broke down because it ran out of gas. Actually, it was just a plan from his grandfather, who intended to prevent him to go back to the city. However, because Saiki had previously read his grandfather's mind, he prepared spare gas in the trunk so they could continue their journey. But not long after that, there was a landslide on the road they were going through. Saiki decided to use the opportunity to show his strength to his grandparents, which surprised by his abilities, but they finally accepted his condition. His parents wanted to tell his grandparents since Saiki was little, but his older brother forbade them. One day while Saiki was walking home from school, his antenna was accidentally damaged by a baseball hit. He becomes out of control of his power and starts destroying many objects around him. Seeing his problem, his parents took Saiki to London to meet the person who created the antenna, his older brother named Kusuke. After arriving in London, his parents enjoyed their vacation by traveling to various places. Saiki then decided to meet Kusuke alone, but before he could leave, Kusuke had already come to pick him up. After meeting Kusuke after being separated for years, he still doesn't like Kusuke because since long time ago they didn't like each other. The reason is that when Kusuke was born, he was considered a very genius child because he had an academic intelligence that was far above average. He has even been able to ride a bicycle and understand high school science since he was 1 year old. But since Saiki was born, Kusuke has always lost to him, who has psychic abilities, making Kusuke decide to go to London and stay away from him. After Kusuke managed to fix his antenna, Saiki then tried to read his brother's mind, but he could block it because his brother is the one who created it. A few days later, when Saiki returns to school, Rain and Nendo intend to invite him to register for the driving license exam during the school holidays, but he refuses the invitation with the alibi that he still doesn't have enough money. After that, Mera invited Saiki to join the hospital volunteer activities. Hiro asked him to practice tennis. Reita invited him to practice the paranormal club, and Kakomi asked him to go on a date. All invitations to fill out activities during school holidays were rejected by him because he wanted to enjoy his vacation in peace. However, after Reita again pleaded with Saiki, he agreed to Reita's invitation and ended up following the invitation of all of his previous friends because they gave schedules on different days. As a result, his vacation schedule is full because he agrees to Reita's invitation. Saiki and his friends went through all their vacation activities together. It starts from the paranormal club practice where Reita and Chio were almost chased by wild boars, then practicing tennis matches where Nendo and Hiro competed with each other. They continue participating in volunteer activities at the hospital where Nendo and Mera could burn fat. After that, they took the driving license exam, where Saiki was the only person who managed to get a license and went on a date with Kakomi, but she seemed frustrated with the presence of a little boy interfering with their date. After the school holidays, the Saiki class accepts a new boy named Saiko, the sole heir of the richest family in Japan. Saiko thinks that the most important thing in life is not talent or hard work but money and wealth. He deliberately came to the school to ask Kaokomi to be his girlfriend. However, after he realized that Kaokomi had fallen in love with Saiki, he became annoyed and immediately used his power to move Saiki's father's office to Siberia. Saiki's father and mother forced Saiki to move to Siberia because they would be paid by someone to move from Japan. Finally, Saiki decided to come directly to Saiko's house and teach him a lesson so that he experienced a mental breakdown. On another day, Saiko begins to learn something very valuable from Nendo, where Nendo makes him realize that in this world, there is something more important than money. A few days later, Kaido invites Saiki and his classmates to come to the Halloween party at his house. However, because they know nothing about Halloween, Hiro and Rain only make costumes from plastic bags and toilet paper. Saiki and Nendo don't even wear costumes at all. Moreover, they do not understand what to do when children come by saying trick or treat. As a result, the children were shot with a water gun. The next day, Saiki discovered that the magician he met a few months earlier had become a very famous magician. The magician chose to perform comedy magic that could entertain the audience because the magician realized that he could never become a real magician like him. The next day, Chiyo suddenly appeared with a completely different appearance from before. She started gaining weight and turned into a fat girl from eating too many snacks. Since she realized her body was getting fat, she started trying hard to lose weight by exercising. Saiki helps Chiyo by entering Kaido into her mind, and she becomes motivated to lose weight. Unfortunately, after she has regained her weight, Kaido and Chiyo's mind instead controls her, and she becomes obsessed with being his slave. The next day, Saiki's friends start acting strangely in front of Saiki by offering him to do different activities. After he investigates, it turns out that his friends are planning to throw a surprise birthday party for him. Tomorrow is not Saiki's birthday but his father's birthday, and he intends to tell them. But after hearing that they had prepared everything very well, from birthday cakes to gifts to greeting letters, he cancelled his intention and followed their plan. The next day, Saiki purposely hypnotizes his friends so they think his father is him. Meanwhile, Saiki asked his father to pretend to be him and participate in the birthday party that his friends had prepared. But in the middle of the party, his father stops pretending to be Saiki and asks him to come to the birthday party that his friends have prepared with all their hearts. Saiki looked proud of his father because he acted like a father for the first time. The anime closes with a scene where Saiki joins his friends to celebrate his birthday. The moral that can be learned from this anime is to use our power wisely, like Saiki, who only uses his powers to help the people around him.